Hello and welcome to the Trappings and Trinkets Impromptu Summer Series podcast. So I was on a walk this afternoon. Well, I should back up. So I came home from bringing my daughter to the school, and when I appeared back at my house, my son was gone, so I thought he was just off doing whatever. And so I went about my afternoon. I did some work, and then I went for a walk. And when I was on the walk, it occurred to me, I wonder if he's working today. So I texted him to ask, and lo and behold, he is working for a couple more hours. So I thought, my daughter's gone and my son is gone. This is my opportunity to record for the week because I think this is the only time they'll both be out of the house at the same time. So unfortunately, I don't have a ton of knitting. My big push lately has been getting a new batch of bags and another new product ready for the Etsy shop. So I'll show you all of that. So it's been cutting into my knitting time a little bit. I have been working on a couple things though, so I promise I will talk about some knitting here. So last week I got to go up to my hometown for just a quick overnight visit. I started a project that I had been wanting to do with my grandfather, I've been wanting to do this for about a year. A year and a half or 2 years ago, I guess it was almost 2 years ago now. So I took a contract job to be an interviewer for a company that helps people write their autobiographies. And so I thought that would be really interesting. I'm just a kind of person that really enjoys hearing people's stories. So I think it's even more interesting when that person is not of your own generation, because obviously they lived there were a lot of things that were different in their life than are in my life. So I find that very interesting. So they paired me up with a local guy, not in my town, but in the next town over. And I spent it was about 9 months going to visit him once or twice a month. I think we had 12 visits in all to help him flesh out. And it was my job to interview him and to kind of keep him focused and to decide what subjects we would talk about that day. I think this guy was kind of an anomaly because he didn't really want to go chronologically. He wanted his book to be more focused on topics. So I just kind of organized that. So anyway, long story short, it was really interesting to hear his story. He did not live a unusual life at all. And I think that's the thing that most people said to me when they heard what I was doing. They were like, oh, well, I could never have anybody write a book about me because I haven't done anything. My life is just pretty normal, pretty typical. And what I say to that is that's kind of what makes it interesting. Everyone can identify with a person that lives a typical life. Like, of course, it's interesting to hear, how did Bill Gates become Bill Gates? Or how did, I don't know, who's a famous person? How did Oprah become Oprah? Those things, of course, they have interesting stories, but they're not necessarily stories that, everyday people will identify with. So it's really interesting to hear just a regular person's story. And my grandpa is just a regular person. He's 90 years old now, so he certainly has had a lot of different experiences and a life that has been, in a lot of the ways the same as mine, but in a lot of ways different than mine. So it's been interesting to hear his stories. So when I proposed this idea to him, I told him I want to write down your stories for posterity, and really I want to do it for myself, but also for my own dad, because this is his father that I'm doing this with, and for my cousin, my aunt, who is this grandpa's daughter. So I just think that people in the family would really enjoy hearing the things that he talks about. So the first day of interview went really well. He started by saying, "Oh, I don't think I have any stories to tell." And then we recorded for about an hour and a half. And then the next day or the next morning, he showed back up at my parents' house and we recorded another half hour of stories. So I think he does have some stories to tell. So that was really fun. He's the last person of that generation that's left in my family. So that made it even more important to me that I kind of get those stories down so that people in the family will know things that happened, the history of the family and who he was, and through him, some of who his parents were and who his wife was. So we'll have all that stuff included. So Maybe that's something that you would find interesting. If you feel like, oh, well, I don't even know where to start. How would I interview someone? There's actually a lot of resources. If you Google something along the lines of interview questions for grandparents, or interviewing a family member, or interviewing a senior citizen, or anything along those lines, there's a lot of websites that have questions. And then really the trick is that you just listen to the story that they're telling. You start them by asking an open-ended question. Don't ask them, did you get your driver's license when you're 16? You ask them, tell me about how you got a driver's license. Or you ask, what was it like when you were in high school? Like, ask something that it's not a yes or no answer. Ask a question so that they have to really be the one to supply the information. And then I do it just with a digital recording device. You actually can use your, if you have an iPhone, you have an app on there that's like a digital voice recorder. So you could use that. I'm using a freestanding digital recorder that plugs into my computer so that I can move the files over there easily. And you can do the same thing with your phone. I just did that because I just kind of wanted one place where I could have all those files and not have to erase everything and keep transferring everything. So for me, it was like I just went on Amazon and spent $30 on the most popular voice recorder that had good reviews, and that was that. So you can do that however you want. And then I just came home and played the voice recorder and typed up all of his stories. Now, the tricky part to it is that, the essence of conversation is not that we necessarily tell a story from point A to point B. Sometimes it's point A, and then we get interrupted, and then we have a little side story, and then we start again, and we talk till point B. But then later on, 10 minutes later in the conversation, we remember some other detail, and then we start talking about the previous story again. So when you are typing up what was said, it's kind of like a puzzle. You have to figure out where everything fits. So, it took me probably 4 or 5 hours to type up that 2 hours worth of conversation, but I suspect it'll take me another 2 hours or so to make everything flow into a narrative tale instead of just like random bits of information. But it was a really interesting day. If you suggest something like this to one of your relatives, you may be surprised by, once they get over that initial hesitancy of, I don't know if I have any stories to tell, I haven't done anything worth writing a book about in my life. Once they get past that, they may really enjoy it just for the aspect of being able to sit and talk and reminisce and tell somebody about, how things were when they were younger. So I would encourage you to help your family or older people that tell their stories. You don't have to write a book. You could just, make it a blog post or something like that. I bet the people that know the person that you're interviewing would really find that interesting. This was one of the stories that kind of stuck in my mind, and it's very short, of something that my grandpa said. I was asking him because we were talking about childhood up to high school and his short military service in this visit. And because my own daughter has just got her driver's license permit, so she has just started driving in the last few days. So that was on my mind. So I did ask him, what was getting a driver's license like when you were a kid? How did you do that? Was there a class at the high school? Did your parents teach you? Like, how did you learn how to drive? And he said, I don't know. There was, some of those farm kids had cars, and after school, you'd just go and learn how to drive from somebody that had a car. And I said, so like the teenagers just taught each other how to drive? This would have been about 1942, 43. And he goes, yeah, you just learned from another kid. And so there was no class. He said, maybe your parents would tell you, but more often it was just you learned from one of the other kids at school. You'd go drive their car after school. So I thought that was interesting. And then to get a license, he said, once you were driving, then you just drive up to the gas station and you'd give them $2 or $5 and they just write you out a driver's license because they saw that you drove up to the gas station to get gas and you were their customer, so they figured you could drive. So that's all it took to get a driver's license in the early 40s in Illinois. Just find a car, drive up to the gas station and give them $5 and that's the whole thing. So see, you can find out interesting tidbits about history. Okay, so let's do a little self-promotion before we talk about knitting, because I'm very excited about this. I had a trio of needle cases that I made because I wanted to make them all up so that I could figure out which one would be kind of the magic combination of I love it, other people love it, I don't hate making it, and the cost of the materials plus my time is going to be a good match for the quality of the product. So those are my 4 things that I think about when I'm considering a new product. So here is needle case number 1. So it looks like a little Trappings and Trinkets bag, but can you see inside of there? Oh, you probably can't see it great. Well, you can see it a little bit. So there are little slots here. This would be easier with needles, wouldn't it? Let me get a couple needles. All right, so in each of these little pockets, you could put a pair of needle tips, right? Okay, so the pockets line the whole interior, and then you could also like throw a skein of yarn in here. This would be, you might be able to fit 2 skeins, but you'd be more safe with 1. And then you could put your cables or, you know, your notions or scissors, your embroidery needles, whatever, in this back pocket, or you could throw those cables and stuff in the interior. But anyway, so this case looks like a bag. So that was fine. I liked it. I didn't love it. It was not the winner. Case number 2 looked like this. It was a little roll-up thing, and when you unroll it, it opens up into a flat deal here. So you've got slots here. This is where your needle tips would go in these little pockets. So you could use it as a interchangeable set case. You could use it as a crochet hook case. You could put your double pointed needles in here. I mean, basically whatever, like your cable needle would fit in there. And then back here, you could either put fixed circulars or you could put your circular cables, all that kind of stuff. And there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3 big pockets where you could put multiple needles in each pocket. And then on the side here, is a Velcro pocket that can hold, you know, whatever else you need. And and this thing just flips up. This is basically just to keep your circular needles from flopping out the top when it's all rolled up like this. All right, so that was case number 2. And again, oops, I rolled it up backwards. So it should go this way. All right, so that one, again, I liked the look of it. It was cute. It was functional. Nothing falls out either end. But it wasn't the winner. Here's the winner. So this one, I think that people liked that it was compact. It had room for all sorts of different things. So it's compact. It's, you know, it's pretty flat and it's pretty small. I think the finished measurements are like 6.5 by 5.5. Maybe this is 7. I don't know. It's pretty small. You can easily fit this, like, I could even put this in my little sock sack. This is like a little 1 skein bag, so I could easily fit it in there. Okay, so anyway, so this one is like a little accordion. Oh, look at that. And I'm glad that I made up a sample, because in making this sample, I realized that if I added 1 more envelope, then I could make enough spaces for the needle tips from a set that has size 4 through size 11, which I think is a pretty typical size range. I could have a separate pocket for each of those sizes. So this will end up, the finished products that will be in my Etsy shop will have, instead of having 4, let's see, is it 4? No, it's, instead of having 3 rows of needles, it'll have 4 rows of needles. And this actually has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 big pockets that you could put fixed circulars or cables, or like I have a needle sizer in here. So the one that will be in the Etsy shop will have 7 pockets. So this will be slightly larger in its finished form, but as you can see, you've got places for each of your needle tips in the little pockets, and then in between you can put your cables, your circulars, your ruler. I could put a pair of scissors in there. You know, you could use one of the pockets as your, you know, your tape measure and your embroidery needles, all that kind of stuff. So it's very functional. It's very compact and it's super cute. Super cute. All right. Oh, and the fastener here on the button is stretchy because the more you pack in here, the more this will expand. I mean, I can't imagine that you're going to pack so many needles in here that it's going to be like, you know, 4 inches thick. But even if it was, this stretch is going to give you a little bit more space to expand here. I did have somebody wondering if I could use a different closure, like something that was a little bit simpler, like a magnetic snap. And while I do love the ease of that, it would limit the size that this could expand to. So I think I am going to stick with the stretchy little loop here that goes around the button. So the only person I think this needle case would not be great for would be someone that had limited dexterity with their fingers. But for everybody else, I think it would be. So this is going to be a new product coming soon from Trappings and Trinkets Etsy shop. Let's talk knitting. So I went to knit night last week, and I had my project with me, but I forgot that I had run out of yarn the previous knit night, and I hadn't opened that bag back up since. And so I had my project, but I did not have any yarn, so I couldn't work on that. So I had to just buy a different project to work on, which was tragic. This is Dreamin' Color Smushy with Cashmere, which is gorgeous. It's a little bit of a, I don't know, I guess technically it's variegated, but it's kind of tonal too, so it's kind of my jam. It's a little bit outside my comfort zone, but I used one of my go-to patterns for crazier yarn. So the pattern is called Groovy, and it is a shawl that basically just has knits and purls, and it goes in a stripe pattern. So whatever your yarn is, like, it would have to be pretty crazy to really compete with this, you know, relatively simple pattern here. So it's coming out very nicely, and Smushy with Cashmere is always a pleasure to knit with, and it'll be nice and soft. This would be a good, you know, it's not quite as thin as a lot of fingering weight yarns, so I would say this is not a summer shawl. This is more like a chilly spring fall. Like if it's 50 degrees out, this is going to feel pretty nice. If it's 30 degrees out, maybe I need something heavier. If it's 70 degrees out or 60 degrees out, it's going to be a little too hot. But it's a very simple pattern, and it's one of those that, like, that night I was like, I just want to sit here at knit night and be able to chat and not have to focus too much on what I'm doing. And so Groovy is the perfect shawl for that. You really don't have too much to think about. The repeat is 14 rows long, and basically, like, if you're doing a purl stitch, or if you're looking at a purl stitch, you're going to make a purl stitch. If you're looking at a knit stitch, you're going to make a knit stitch for 14 rows, and then you have to change to the opposite. So you only have to think every 14 rows. There is some increases on one end, but they happen on every single row. So again, you don't really have to keep track of it. You just have to be like, oh, I'm on that end again. Got to make my increase. So it's about as simple as a shawl pattern can be. I apparently got rid of the label. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know where the label is, so... apologies, I'm not sure what this colorway is called, but it's very pretty. I think it might have been, they were doing like a Dream in Color a month club, and I think this was one of the club colors. And it would have been fairly recently because my yarn shop only started carrying that in the last 6 months probably. So if you really want to know what colorway it is, that would be a way to figure it out. Look up the club colors. The other thing that I've been knitting is a swatch, and this is for a sweater of the future. So let's look at the correct side. Here we go. That's the right side. And I haven't blocked it yet, so it looks a little crazy. But as you can see, it's kind of a circular pattern with lots of lace. So that's what I'm working on. And that's well, I'll tell you, this is for use with the sweater pattern that I'm working on. And the chart kind of looks horrifying. Well, here's my, whoops. I posted a picture of the chart, of part of the chart on my Instagram and said, like, I'm just going to apologize for this in advance. That's right. Look at that. Kind of looks like a monster chart, doesn't it? I promise it's really not that bad. Once you get into it and you realize what's going on, it gets more intuitive. So certainly I am looking at the chart the whole way through, but it's not a chart that you have to like decode it every time. I'm trying to show you the lace better, and I'm not sure that, well, I guess that shows through a little bit. There you go. You can see those circles a little bit better. So anyway, what was I saying about the chart? It's not a chart that is mysterious. It's a chart that makes sense once you're into the project. And it's really, I mean, the hardest things are probably like slipping a stitch, knitting two together, and passing the slip stitch over. So it's like there's decreases that go from 3 stitches to 1 stitch. It uses that one. It uses slip 2, knit 1, pass over, and it uses knit 3 together and purl 3 together. So that's probably the hardest thing going on. There's really nothing difficult here. It's just lots going on. And there aren't any rows that are just purl. Every other row almost. So it's a 24 row repeat, and only 2 of those wrong side rows have anything other than knit the knits and purl the purls. So they are rest rows except 2 of them. So 10 of the 12 wrong side rows are rest rows. The other 2 just have like a couple little things to do. So anyway, am I really convincing you? This, I mean, honestly, like this sweater is one of those things that I really wanted for myself. And sometimes that's how my knitting patterns are. I'm like, I'm making this for myself. If it's not terribly difficult to write it up, I'll write it up. I'll see if anybody wants to test it. And if that goes well, then I will put it out for people to knit if they're interested. But, you know, because I always come from a place of I'm making this because I want it. I'm not super invested in how many people are going to knit this or how many patterns are going to sell or any of that kind of stuff, because that's just icing on the cake. I already have the sweater for myself, so that's my motivation for making it. So trucking along, getting somewhere, but honestly, now that I'm working on this batch of bags, that sweater is probably the sweater pattern production is probably gonna go on hold for a few weeks here while I get these bags made. So I know I thought that was gonna be in testing soon. It's gonna be a little bit longer. Hello, it's the next day. I didn't quite get done. Well, it's 2 days later. I didn't quite get done when I was recording. So I'm back. I didn't just go off and change my clothes and, I don't know, make my hair flatter. Anywho, I wanted to share with you because whenever I find dairy-free products, because I don't know, maybe there's people out there that are enjoying the dairy-free things that I am showing you, I found another really good one. So I wanted to pass that on. This one was just at my local Kroger. So I know that's a chain that it's pretty popular in the Midwest. Anywho, so this is called Tessame's salad dressing. The one that I got is creamy ranch. I have not been able to find a dairy-free ranch dressing, and having a dairy-free kid, well, not dairy-free, a lactose-free kid, that was very challenging to raise a fairly picky eater, especially when it comes to vegetables. Like, he really preferred to eat vegetables with some sort of dip, and, you know, ranch is the favorite, but I didn't have, like, Hidden Valley Ranch when he was growing up. So I was always trying to make my own ranch dressings, and I would do, like, a sour cream or mayonnaise as the base and then put spices in it. And they were okay. But homemade dressing does not stay constituted for that long, like when it's a creamy one like this. So it was just kind of a pain because you'd have to make it like every week or so. So anyway, I was very happy to find this, and it's really good. So this one is just sunflower oil, lemon juice, mustard, a bunch of spices. There's egg in it, vinegar, pepper, let's see, more spices, and that's it. So the other thing that I liked is there's no sugar, and there's no, like xanthan gum is something that you see, I think, in dressings. It's in a lot of products, but it's one of those products, or it's one of those things that some people have digestive trouble with. So I was very happy that it doesn't contain that. It really doesn't contain anything that I can't pronounce. Like, I know what everything on this ingredient list is, and the only allergen that I see is probably the egg. So this might work well for a number of people. Since it is too late, 2 days later, I actually did have a little time to sew, and so I would like to introduce to you a new product from the Trappings and Trinket Etsy shop. It is fancy accordion style needle cases. Now, just as an experiment, I wanted to see, like, how much could I fit in this needle case? And so I went around to all of my little pouches and bags and needle storage units, and everything I own is in this case. Now, okay, I shouldn't say everything. Not everything. I do have probably 5 or 6 needles or interchangeable set tips on a cable that are currently engaged in projects. But this is all of my needles, my loose needle tips, my double pointed needles. I have everything in this one case. So you can see that there is a lot of storage space there. Now, this one is sewn as a interchangeable set format. So what that means is that I have enough little slots like this that I can fit sizes 4 all the way up through size 11. So if you have a set that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 and a half, 11, that fits perfectly in here. In between the little slots for the needles are the places for the cables or for the fixed circulars. And then in the back of mine, that's where I put my double pointed needles, because the back pocket is deep and the little pockets for the interchangeable needle tips are sewn to fit the tips. So my tips that I used as the example are, let's see, they are like 4.5 inches. So this is a knit pick set. There's my ruler. So that goes to 4.5 inches there. So if your tips are 4.5 inches on your interchangeable set, then they will poke out just a little bit like these two. Now, if your tips were a little bit longer, they could certainly still fit in here. They would just poke out a little bit more. If your tips are very small, this might be a challenging case to store them in, because these pockets are not big. Like, you would have trouble getting 2 fingers into the pocket to get your needle that's, you know, way down in there. So if you have real short needle tips, like less than 4 inches, this is not a good case for that. Anyway, back to the double pointed needles. You could also use this as a double pointed needle case, but I'm going to recommend that if you are interested in that you contact me to ask for a special custom case, because, like I said, these little slots right now are sewn for these interchangeable needle set tips. And if I were to put the double pointed needles in a pocket, they would stick up that much. So obviously, That's not going to work. So I would need to sew a much deeper bottom on these little tiny pockets if you wanted to put, like, if you wanted to put all your 4s in one of them, all your 5s, all your 6s. If you want to have them together like that, I would need to adjust the depth of the pocket. So that's a long-winded way of saying that if you want to use this as a double-pointed needle storage kit primarily, you're going to want to contact me to do a custom project for you. So anyway, I was going to show you everything I have in here. So I have all of these. Oops, there's more. I have all of these double-pointed needles. So this is my, I don't use double-pointed needles that much. So I have all those. A lot of those. Fixed circular, another 2 fixed circulars. 1, 2 more. Another one. And I've got, that looks like 3 more in the front pocket. I've got a pair of scissors in here. I have some loose cables from an interchangeable set. And since I want to keep these pairs where they are, I also had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little sets of needle tips. So that is a lot that you can fit. Oh, and I also had this ruler in here. So that's a lot of stuff that you can fit in one little pouch. And the finished dimensions are like 7 inches by about 5 inches. So it's really pretty small. And it's a nice way to store all of your stuff so that you can have it on hand. And instead of having to figure out what needles you want to bring to knit night, just throw this little pouch into your bag and you can have it all with you. So you're going to start seeing those in the Trappings and Trinkets Etsy shop. Probably not the day this publishes, but my hope is to finish the ones that I have over the weekend and to have them up there by next Monday, which would be like June 18th or something like that. I was going to show you the colors that I have, or the fabrics that I have. I have this one, and most of these there's only one, so I apologize for that, but if you want it, now you know there's only one. So it's this kind of looks like distressed wood, and the lining is this this gold batik. I have one that is nice cherry blossom flowers, and the interior is this graphic design. There's one that's yarn, and the interior is this tree motif here. I have a nice summer sea creature case, jellyfish and sea creatures with whales, whales on the inside, upside down whales. I do have 2 of this one, bright blue with white arrows, and the interior is a different, more colorful arrows print. And the last one is owls, and the interior is this blue paisley business. So those are all the fabric choices, and like I said, I should have them available starting Monday, June 18th or whatever that is. I don't know. Let's talk about sewing. I have a couple projects of the future. The first one is I'm sewing along with a sew-along that is being sponsored by, there's a couple people on Instagram that are working together to do this sew-along. So I'm just going to link those. Well, I'll just put those names here and I'll put them in the show notes because it's slipping my mind right now. But I've been wanting to do the metamorphic dress from Sew Liberated for probably 6 months. And I just, like, every time I go to the fabric store, I'm always looking for what fabrics do I want to make it out of. It's a little bit tricky because it's a dress that the front hem kind of comes up and curves. And so you see that second layer. So the second layer has to be a double-sided fabric, because the trick to this dress is that you can also completely turn it inside out and just wear it as a plain dress that does not have a hem feature. So that was the real sticking point for me, is finding a fabric that I liked that was also completely this, well, completely reversible. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the same on the inside and the outside, but it has to look nice on the inside and the outside because you're going to see it when you wear it inside out, just as a plain dress, or when you turn it the other way and you have the dress with the shorter hem that has the second dress showing a little bit beneath it. So here's what I finally came up with. For my bottom fabric, this is the one that has to be reversible. I chose this kind of rose colored tie-dye. It's really looking red on the screen, but it's more of a rose color. So you can see here's one side and then there's the other side of the fabric. So it's a little bit lighter. Well, no, it's really not. I don't know. It looks pretty similar on both sides. So there's that. And then on the upper layer that you're only going to see on one side of the dress, I chose this purple kind of splotchy fabric with these little white dots on it. So together, I'll help you. You can imagine this with me. You've got the sundress, and then you've got this kind of sticking out of the bottom of the hem. So for some reason, in my mind, I wanted it to be a darker color that was sticking out of the bottom and a lighter color on top. And I think I achieved that pretty well. I had some ideas of fabrics that I could use that were lighter on the bottom, but it just didn't look right to me. So I'm sure that's my own weird personal preference, but that's what I'm using. So hopefully I can get that started, I don't know, sometime in the next month. I'm really going to be working a lot on bags and needle cases for sewing here kind of coming up, but that's my next, hopefully, sewing project. And then the other projects that I have fabric for, well, actually, there's like 3 of them. I have a couple of fabrics that I was going to say one other thing about this. It was important to me that this dress is drapey and not real stiff. Because there's 2 layers to this, I really wanted the layers to be pretty drapey. So this is a cotton fabric, but it's a real drapey fabric. So I liked that a lot. And then this is like a jersey knit kind of thing. So both of these are very wiggly, and they will work well together to not have a stiff, like this is made out of basically like quilter's cotton. And it is a much more stiff, like structured looking kind of thing. So I wanted this to be a more casual, drapey dress. Okay, anywho, so let's talk about the other things that I have. I bought this pattern. It's a McCall's pattern. And I liked this view. I'm not sure that it's going to be a long thing. I think maybe it will be more like a right below the knee sort of dress for me. I'm probably not going to do the curved hem like this one has, but I'll just cut it off straight and have it right below the knee. That's kind of like my favorite dress lengths are either right above the knee or right below the knee. That seems to be pretty universally flattering. So I wanted to do this, and I chose 2 different fabrics. One, like I think probably this is the one I'm going to use for this dress. So a real nice indigo with white paisley on it. And then I have another, which you're gonna be like, that looks very similar. And it does kind of, but it's different enough. This is more of a purple, whereas this is more of an indigo. And this one, I think I'm just gonna make my standard sundress, just a sleeveless dress that's just kind of hits right above the knee or right below the knee. That I've done out of my pattern that I made from another dress. So these are both jersey knit type fabrics, and they will make very nice, cool summer dresses. And then the last project, this is kind of a winging it sort of project. I bought this fabric, which this is another one that it said it was 100% cotton, but it's so different from the quilter's cotton that I'm very surprised at that. But anyway, it's a pretty wiggly, drapey cotton, and it's pretty thin, but it's still, like, it's not see-through. Anyway, I wanted to use this to make a nightgown, and I wanted to do like a pin tuck A-line style, where the yoke has a lot of pleats here to kind of draw the fabric in at the neckline, and maybe that would just go to about right below the bust, and then those pleats would stop being sewn together, so they would flare out, and that way the full width of the fabric would flare out for like the rest of the body, so that your, obviously your butt is going to be bigger than your chest. So well, for most people. So the pleats would give it the A-line shape. There wouldn't be any shaping other than that. So this is one that I'm really I don't have a pattern for it. I just have an idea. So we'll see. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that yet, but it's just fabric. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but I have a feeling I can figure it out. I also wanted to pass on that the Welcome Blanket organization is doing another charity blanket party this summer. So it's the same thing as last year. You can make a blanket out of anything. You can knit, you can crochet, you can quilt it, you could weave it, I guess, like anything you want to make a blanket out of. Go ahead and do that, and you send it to the Welcome Blanket organization. I will dig up that address and put it in the show notes. But anyway, I did this last summer, and I'm hoping to do it again this summer. I haven't started yet, but I really enjoyed making the blanket, and it's just a kind thing to do for a family that has come from somewhere else. And so I think it's a very worthwhile organization, and I know they're trying to do something positive. So I'm happy to support them. And if you are interested, I will put the address that you can send that blanket to in my show notes. If I remember correctly from last year, they were asking for the blankets to be around 40 inches square. They are not at all strict about that. You can really make it whatever size you want. I think that they were just trying to make it a size that wouldn't be overwhelming for people. So they're happy to take the smaller throws that would be 40 inches-ish square, or if you wanted to make it 40 inches wide but longer so that an adult could be comfortable in it, or you could even make it a little bit wider and make it like a two-person blanket. So they really leave all of that up to you. Any color, any style, made from pretty much any sort of like yarn or fabric or whatever you make a blanket out of. They are not picky at all. So anyway, just wanted to pass that on, put it out there that if you are looking for a charity project, that the Welcome Blanket might be just your thing. I think I've finally got everything recorded, and I'll start editing it as soon as I take my daughter driving, because I promised her I would take her driving today. So fun time. She's doing a good job. I feel like I just did this. I mean, my son is almost 3 years older than her, and I feel like we were just doing this with him, but time flies, I guess. So anyway, I hope you have a wonderful couple weeks, and thanks so much for watching. If you're interested in those needle cases, check out the Trappings and Trinkets Etsy shop, starting Monday, June 18th, and they should be listed there. All right. Have a wonderful couple weeks, and I will see you later. Bye.